All right, hello. My name, voice. Hello, my name is Oscar and Fire, and honest to goodness, I've been thinking about things, and I want to talk about them while I'm thinking about it. I just threw on the cloak for shits and giggles, by the way. I don't really need to wear it right now or anything, but I figured, you know what, we're gonna talk about Shannara, so might as well wear the cloak. But no, I wanted to. I've been thinking about Shannara related stuff for a while now. And I had this weird epiphany, and I want to talk about it. And then I might talk about something else on top of that. So this might be kind of a long video if I do talk about that thing. But the thing I want to talk about. So if you watched my earlier Shannara reviews, namely Defenders from a few years back, and the Fall Shannara review I did a year ago-ish, you will know that, of course, I was incredibly disappointed by both of those series. I actually thought Defenders was flat out the worst Shannara series, and Fall of Shannara is very disappointing in and of itself too. And I was thinking about it yesterday, just completely randomly. I was walking home from work, and I'm thinking, you know, the more I think about it, the more I feel like Dark Legacy and Fall of Shannara should have had their plots flipped. So hear me out on this. So, of course, in Dark Legacy of Shannara, the Elcris fails again, demons are invading, Arashak gets sacked, we find out the Elfstones, all that stuff happens, right? And in the Fall of Shannara, the Scar invasion, Scar invasion threatens the Four Lands only to kind of, fizzle out at the end. So here's what happens. What if the Fall of Shannara, which, by the way, is a far more exciting title name for a series that is not the ultimate series, the final series in the series. What if the Fall of Shannara, almost the entire plot, maybe get rid of some of the stuff like Driscark and the Forbidding and all that, what if we all shove that over into that slot that's currently occupied by the Dark Legacy of Shannara? We stick the series there. The Scar invasion happens then, and we change it up a little. The Scar invasion, instead of coming from the north and coming from across the sea and everything, it comes unexpectedly from the south. What if that is where it comes from? It comes from the south, and it's an attack directly on the Federation, right? And they conquer the Federation. That's the thing. They conquer the Federation. Maybe halfway through book 2 or something. We'll make it a 3-part series. Could be a 4-book series. Doesn't matter. But somewhere halfway through the narrative, they conquer the Federation, and so now it's a mad scramble. So it's like the Scar invade, and they're trying to. And they're trying to take, and it's the same motivation, same idea. Well, not the exact same motivation. I always thought that Random Climate Crisis was a really weird, bizarre, out of nowhere sort of thing. Oh yeah, the Skarsland is getting really cold. We better find someplace warmer. Now, why? Why is that the premise? That's such a silly premise, But it's just like an invasion for conquest of land. It's like the Mongol invasion. In fact, it can't be comparable to the Mongol invasion, But albeit without the whole, until the Hun dying, Outside of that part, though, it basically though it's just a wildly successful invasion though, and they seize control of the Federation. They seize control of Arashag, and so it's up to like the elves and the dwarves and the trolls and everything to try and form and and the druids to successfully form an alliance, and the gnomes, because Lord knows Terry Brooks completely forgot about the gnomes after the High Druid of Shannara. They don't even exist anymore. I don't think he mentions the gnomes a single time after the High Druid of Shannara. But my memory could be lapsed. They could have mentioned it in Dark Legacy, but he definitely doesn't mention it in Defenders or Fall. But they try to form but they have to form an alliance to stop the Scar invasion before they take over the whole of the Four Lands. And they succeed by the skin of their teeth. Like Calahorn becomes a thing again, and I know I brought that up before. Maybe Leah becomes an independent kingdom again, forming this alliance. And by the way, this goes back to my to what I was talking about, I think in, what was it, Wish Song? No, I was talking about an Elfstones. I talked about an Elfstones, my review there, where I brought up the fact that, Terry Brooks makes a huge deal in the original Shannara trilogy of the races uniting with one another, no longer being pitted against one another by the Warlock Lord or Mord Wraiths or whoever, but instead uniting together as a single unified entity. you know, and as a single unified political state, I should say, rather, you know, alliance, whatever. And he just completely abandons that idea after the High Druid, basically, it feels like. You know, like, he just totally abandons that idea. It's no longer a thing. The Federation dominates everything. It gets boring. You know, instead of evolving the story in the direction he's really moving it towards in the first place, he instead just kind of abandons the idea. And you're just like, why? Why would you do this? Terry, just... do you remember your own books? You know, because, like, it's kind of allegorical in a way anyway. You know, it's kind of allegorical to our modern day and, you know, and relations between, you know, ethnicities and cultures and everything. And it's like, why did you abandon that? Why did you abandon that excellent, wonderful idea there? I don't get it. I'm so confused. Because it's such a great idea. And the idea of the Fall of Shannara basically being about the Federation, which is the biggest government in the Four Lands, right? There's the biggest government in the Four Lands. You know, the collapse of the Federation would be a massive upheaval. You know, would be this massive upheaval in the politics of the Four Lands. You know, there would be a huge upheaval in the politics of the realm. And it's just... it never happens, even though, again, Terry Brooks also spends a lot of time setting this up. He spends a lot of time setting up the Federation being a villain, and then the Federation never really suffers the sort of defeat it deserves. You know, it never suffers a kind of collapse. And here, this is where you do it. You have a more powerful force, attack them, and destroy them. And then it's up to an alliance of the races, you know, Elfstones of Shannara, to actually defeat them. I feel like it sounds like such a better idea than what he gave us, all the rote repetition and all the sort of boring plotting. And then Defenders of Shannara, after that, makes more sense. Because instead of it just being a random series about 3 completely random events, you can make it a series about 3 events tied to actually defending the land of the Four Lands. I was going to say the land of Shannara, but that's not the name. But tied into the Four Lands. Like, think about that. Suddenly, Defenders means something. Instead of being about, you know, instead of it being about the Druids dealing with magic Jabba the Hutt, Arcanon, instead, you make it about defending Shannara from the Scar. It's like, what? And that would actually be brilliant. That would actually be cool. That would actually be interesting. You know, it's just that's such a better idea. I mean, and I'll grant you, by the way, for the record, I know all of this hindsight. All this is in hindsight. All this is after the fact. It's too late now. All the books are written. There's no fixing it. But if you were to do it better, I feel like this is a way you would do it better. Because the Defenders of Shannara can be about the Druids maintaining... and this is part of what really bothered me about Defenders and the Fall of Shannara. The Druids never become the kind of heroes we want them to be. They're always being subverted. There's always internal elements in the Druid order that's subverting the order. There's always something going wrong with the Druids. And we never get to see the Druids just ever be flat out be... like, kind of like, we do kind of see it in Dark Legacy, but it's always undermined by something, right? You know, we never get to see the Druids be the heroes we kind of expect them to be. You never get to see them be the Jedi of the Four Lands. You know? We never do. And it's such a shame. It's such a shame that we never get to see them be that. You know? And it sucks because it leaves the Druids feeling kind of underwhelming. And I mean, I get it, you know. It's a darker fantasy. It's not meant to have such clear cut, black and white, good and evil sort of thing. But that doesn't mean that you can't have it either. And that's the thing. It doesn't mean you can't have it, because what happens when you do it too much, when you have too much ambiguity, when you have too much darkness, it starts to kind of drag you down. You know? After the bittersweet but unequivocal victory at the end of High Druid, where the Federation is defeated very decisively in battle, if I recall correctly, because I know the Federation's beaten by the Alliance, by the Freeborn Alliance, but but of course Grian Onsford has to go through the trial of being trapped in the Forbidding, and she ultimately gives up on the goal of being Ardreach to the Druids because she just it can't all the evil she did as a young woman can't be undone, right? It can't be undone. So it's a good ending. And then the story just kind of meanders after that, and we never get a sense of because I think at the end, because here, let me put it to you this way. Yes, Bremen, Alanon, Walker, they all engage in their own forms of deception and kind of this undercurrent of not being perfectly honest with people and everything. But never at any point in these stories do you as a reader doubt that the Druids are good, and they are a force for good, and they are meant to be a force for good. And Terry Brooks never wants to commit to the idea that the Druids could ever actually succeed at being a force for good. And I hate that. Because I feel like it undermines the points of his own story most of the time. It feels like he changes his tack and suddenly wants the Druids to be, maybe the Druids shouldn't have all this power. And it's like, but that's never how you presented the Druids before. And it's kind of a shift, and it's an unfortunate shift. It's a very unfortunate and unhealthy shift for the narrative. And the end result is that we never get to, it's like when the Druids are like a single person in the Order, when it's just Bremen, when it's just Alanon, when it's just Walker, when it's just Driscoll Ark, the Druids are more or less unequivocally good, because of course, in the Fall of Shannara, what's her face? Can't remember her name again. I literally have it on the tip of my tongue. I literally have like the mental image I have in front of my head. The villain from the Fall of Shannara. I really kind of want to remember this before I go on. Okay, I'll get back to it later. But it's like obviously she's not really a proper Druid because she's just trying to create a Druid order in her own image, But why don't we ever get to see the Druids not destroyed, unequivocally being a force for good in Florida? We only get 2 series where they really kind of get to do that. Everywhere else, they're big nothing. And that's not a good creative direction, in my opinion, because it gets kind of, it's depressing for the reader, for the audience. Anyway, sorry, that was a tangent. Getting back to my original point, which is about the, which was, of course, about rearranging the book order, the series of the books. Why, after we get to Defenders, right? And Defenders is a proper series, a meaningful series. It can still be 3 separate stories. It can still have most of its component elements, honestly. But it's a series that actually has a focus and a purpose. You get to the Fall of Shannara, which is now the Dark Legacy of Shannara. And this story is different, very different. Because, of course, it can't be quite the same. But here's an interesting part. What if... So, we have the same thing happen. The Elpris fails, and the demons invade. But what if this time, instead of it just kind of being a random happenstance that is kind of like, why? I can't remember actually what happened exactly. Did the Elpris just die, or was it poisoned? I don't remember. Either way, what if we bring back something from the old world? Let's say it's been like 200 years, because I think it's roughly the time frame between Dark Legacy and the Fall of Shannara, right? In the actual books. What if after 200 years of mostly cold, sometimes hot war, what if the allied nations of the Eastland, Northland, and Westland, what if they are all like kind of gotten complacent? They still have, they're still watching the border. They still have armies ready to go, but they've gotten complacent, and the Scar launch a surprise attack on our heroes. They launch a surprise attack in Colhaven and Arbalon and Paranor, And they bring back something from the old world. Firebombing. Like the firebombing of Dresden or Tokyo. Like that. You know, they have some sort of technology or some sort of magic, and they just burn the cities. Right? And in the process, the Elchris is destroyed. The Elchris burns and is destroyed. And suddenly the demons are unleashed on the land. But this time, there's no going back. And suddenly, our heroes, the druids and the elves and their allies, they have to figure out how to stop the demons and to stop the Scar. But of course, the Scar are being beleaguered by demons too, because the Scar didn't really ever understand the Elchris. Because maybe the Scar are more technological than they are magical or something along those lines. And they believe that a lot of the myths of the Four Lands are just that. They're myths. You know, there's no guardian in Paranor. The Elchris is just a tree, you know. They just believe it's all myths. And so they make a critical error, destroying the Elchris, and suddenly demons are swarming all over the Four Lands. Paranor is besieged. The Westland is overrun. You know, it's like suddenly we have ironically we have a story that's worthy of the title, The Fall of Shannara, and we have to figure out, are heroes actually going to get out? And there's tension to it, you know, because the problem is that there's no tension in the Fall of Shannara. It always feels like, you know, the good guys, Driscoll Ark and Tarsha Kanan, you know, are going to. I almost had that woman's name in my head. Anyway, you know, and all the others, you know, it always feels like they are never going to. It never feels like they're actually going to lose. It never feels like anything's going to fall. It never feels like anything's going to go horribly wrong. You know, and it's just like it's a bad series for that reason, because there's no real tension to it. It always feels like it's going in the same direction that Terry Brooks always brings it in. And what if this time an actual disaster occurs, and maybe they won't get out of it this time? Or if they do get out of it, everyone, all the good guys, even the bad guys, maybe it all gets blurred, and maybe they're all diminished at the end. Maybe they successfully create a new Elchris. Maybe they find maybe they go to the Bloodfire and discover they can make a new Elchris, but it's going to take a hell of a lot to do it. Maybe they have to sacrifice 1 million people to do it, you know? Just to seal the demons away. Or maybe they find a way to protect themselves against the demons, like a la the elves on Morrowind and the Elf Queen of Shannara. You know? A way to ward the demons off in the Four Lands, or a way to ward themselves off from the demons in the Four Lands. You know, maybe the mountains, you know, ringing Paranor, you know, they can do something like, you know, there's a million ideas here that we can do with this, that we can make a story with, you know, by flipping these stories around and creating a new, you know, creating a paradigm that's actually new and unique and interesting. You know, we're still repeating old plots, but we're doing something new with it, instead of repeating an old plot, but it's just the same old, you know? I don't know. It just feels like an idea to me. And again, I know, all said and done, but at the same time, I would love to see a better execution of this series, because the way it ended was a disappointment, and that is a shame. That is a shame. All right. Honest to goodness, I'm not. Well, I did say I have something else to talk about. I'm not going to talk about it here because I don't think it's actually worth it. I feel like this is great as a video on its own. So I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. This is just a random little thing that I kind of thought up, and I'm like, all right, let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Let's get into some of these ideas and just see if I can go somewhere with them. So if you enjoyed it, I hope you did, leave a like, leave a comment, share it around, and I will catch you next time. Hopefully for my review of, well, I might do the other video like right after I record this, but after that, my next review of the Voyage of the Gerald Shannara, Ilsewich. Until next time, everybody.